Because I was talking
No,
to
just
John.
Okay,
And,
I got
you know,
it. I
I'm
didn't read it
grateful,
all
I'm
the way yet.
grateful, humbling job.
So do we need to get on command or which method? Okay.
So it's like.
You should be logged in. If you have your computer, you can log in, but it's not a requirement right now.
Was it good for me to come today? I know I've written a few contracts. Okay, I know I got your email.
This is yes, you're in the right place.
Okay. Well, because
Not
I was
that
like,
it will be, it's like, okay, I kind of know how to do that, kind of do that. I want it to be
but I
like you
figure I would
log in.
still learn
correct.
because I've only done like 2 contracts, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you're in the right place. This is good. You should have shown up. You're good. Hilton wrote a contract as well, so it's not that the idea was behind the idea and why, and I try not to like throw something on the calendar. That's not the way I like to do things. But what had happened is we just had some questions about some things, and I did add you to it, even though you had done some, because you have had some questions. And for the most part, we've done it kind of remotely as far as putting together a contract. So being here, just make it a little bit easier for you. Yeah. Yeah. It makes, as much as I adore talking to you on Sunday afternoons,
I try not to do that often.
no, you don't. Actually, you don't. I was kind of making it, but I will make that comment. Reporting so that we can use this later. All right. So yay. Congratulations. You guys have now have an offer to put in today. That's going to be what we're going to go through. We are going to ensure that you know where to grab things. So this may go at a medium speed. And if it goes at a medium speed, just know this is recorded, or it will, well, it's being recorded. And so you can always go back to it at another time. This goes in conjunction with the email that you got from me when you first started that says something like, welcome to the productivity coaching. Tara, you'll get an email like this that has a couple of PDFs of a list of classes that you can take that are the videos. Is everybody kind of familiar with this? Yeah. Okay, good. So this is in conjunction with that. But the idea is I want you to be able to, if you were to show a house this afternoon, to be able to go back and actually put together the offer. This is not the negotiating part. This is not the legal part of it that you go through when you go to those classes with like the attorney that does classes for us, or our broker Scott Knowles will do classes. This is not to replace that. You still need to go to that. This is more of the tools that we use to put it together. So as you have questions, just keep in mind, this is the application of the knowledge that you're learning on the other side of it. I'm going to give you a little bit of that, but the intention is not for me to take away. I'm not your broker, so I don't want to be over stepping in front of the broker. So when you hear what the broker says about a certain paragraph or something in the contract, I want you to always defer to our broker or the attorney that we have that speaks with us. Mine is the application, putting in the contract. So don't dismiss those other classes that we have. All right, so congratulations. We have an offer that we're putting in. So let me, give me a moment here, and I am going to pull up.
So do we need that piece of paper there?
Piece of paper that we get. Oh, Hilton's not doing his job. Oh,
You did?
Did I not? I put it in the front. Did you move seats?
so Hilton had a job to give you a piece of paper. And she moved. So it's all her fault is what I'm saying.
My fault, yes.
Apparently it's her fault. So the Tara, you do not have this. However, those that are in the class have this. And so some of you're just really viewing this so that it'll make sense to you once you have access to the system. So the page that you have in front of you, one of the pages is this. So I'm taking this as our broker and his wife's listing. And so I'm just going to take this. You have, all of you have access to your MLS. So please go ahead and log in to the MLS. I want you to have the piece of paper because I want you to either highlight or circle, or there's going to be things that I'm referring to. And I want you to have that as a tool when you go to write the first few contracts that you write, because you're going to stumble through it no matter what, the first time that you do it or the first few times. But if you have your example, then it's probably going to go a little bit smoother. So I'm just going to grab this MLS number and go back to Stellar. So if you did not have your MLS yet, you wouldn't be able to log in here, but we're going to go ahead and log in. So I believe that everyone in the room currently knows how to do this. If you didn't know, you can actually do an MLS number over here. Little side note, if you're ever talking to a client and they're talking about 123 Main Street and you go onto the MLS, and on the MLS, you can't find that property, has that happened to anybody yet? Okay, it will happen at one time. If that ever happens, something that you can quickly do is, I'm assuming there's going to be a Main Street somewhere. Let's say you go, just Google that address, and what will probably come up is something, and whether or not it is active on the MLS or not, you'll be able to actually see that, especially if you see something that comes up with like Trulia or Zillow, it'll say whether or not it's active. But what they have probably done is they probably were on, most likely they were on Zillow, because this is what they do. You have a client that's on Zillow and they say, oh, I see 123 Main Street and it is like this fabulous house and it's amazing and the price is awesome and all these kinds of things. And it is not an active listing. It is just showing up because Zillow is grabbing information. And when they grab information, sometimes it populates when you write that in. And so somebody sees it, it's like, oh, great, that, it's a new listing. And they're not looking at the other stuff. There was probably something in the background that changed that allowed Zillow to think that it's like new information. And so then it starts populating Google when you're searching. So that may be a little like the geeky part of it, but it does happen. And you will have, oh, I want to go and see. And it's like, okay, that sold 3 months ago. But apparently they're putting in a pool. And so they added something to the tax records. And so now all of a sudden it's showing up. So that was a little side note, but that's that. So in this instance, we have one property. Oh, did it go pending last night? It was active yesterday. It did go pending last night?
My social.
It says active.
My social is active.
Oh, I didn't, hold on. I apologize. I'm missing.
You didn't put the number in.
I didn't put the number in. I'd missed the A. I did. There you go. So when I click on this, it's going to give me the property. And so the paper that you have in front of you looks like this. Keep in mind, as far as the display part, broker synopsis gives you as much information as you need to put in a contract. One of the other views may not give you all of the information. So I have this. It has everything that I need. And then the other piece of information that I'm going to have to pull is going to be from the tax record. So if you look at your MLS sheet, there is this little circle. I like IMAP. There are other, there is another tax service called Realist. For the most part, we use IMAP more than Realist. So because of that, I'm going to use IMAP. And I'm just going to click on that and open up another tab.
Susan,
Yes.
I was just in trouble getting into the MLS. I'm in now.
Uh-huh.
Once you enter, what link did
Do
you
the
go to?
MLS and do the number from the paper that you have there. Do you have the listing page? Oh.
Okay, oh, that's the one.
That's the one. Sorry, I thought he was one step further. Okay, so I've got my tax record and I have my MLS sheet. These are the two things that I'm going to need to actually produce an offer. So once I have that, now what I'm going to do is if I go into my Keller Williams homepage, it's going to allow me to go to command, or I can go into command directly. You're actually able to just type it in. So remember, command is our system that will allow us to do the paperwork around putting in an offer. So I can either just click here or also up on top, there is, oops. And technology is also command. So either one of those will take me to command and it'll take me to the main screen within command. If you have not done this yet and you're prepared to, or you're about to put in an offer, you must add whoever is going to be on the contract must also be in your contacts. So whoever is going to be on the contract, we must have their legal name as per what their driver's license says. Or if they don't have a driver's license, then a passport, whatever they're going to be using when it comes to at the closing table, they're going to ask for ID. Please have that info, whatever is on that document. So most of the time it's middle name. Yeah. Just as your rule. It doesn't mean if you did it and it was missing their middle name that you couldn't still have an active contract. I want you to, the right way is whatever is their legal name. And usually a driver's license or a passport is going to be best place to, that they're going to use when it comes to the closing table. So this is my home screen of command. So again, if I had not entered them into my contacts as of yet, I will need to do that. In this case, let's assume that I have put them in there. I would also say as a rule, when you're taking people out to show them homes, go ahead and put them into command. There are a lot of things that we have with command. There's follow-up abilities, there's task management, there's paperwork and all of that. So why not go ahead and put them in there? If you start to do a contract, it won't work unless you have them in there. So I have them in there. I can do one of two things to actually get to the point that I'm going to put in a contract. I could go and find the person, click on them, and you see how there is an opportunity section right over here. I could just click on that. And then I could add or create an opportunity from there. Or I can go to opportunity and I can create it from here. So I'm going to do it from here just to show you this way. You can do it either, doesn't really matter. One of the things that is common that we make as an error, and I have been guilty of this. I was guilty. There was somebody that I did this like to, yeah, did it to Hilton last week, that I missed that when we were doing it, that we did not change it, because in that case it was for a buyer. So please make sure that your opportunity type is done correctly at the beginning, because it will not work at other parts of this process. And if you had done that as a mistake, just archive it and move along and do it again. There is no way to change the opportunity type, at least at this point. So in this instance, we're going to do it as a buyer. We're going to find the client. So let's find the client. Let's use him. Let's see if I can find him. Whoops. Okay, I'm going to use her, which is me. That is weird. Speaking in the wrong. Okay, carry on. I know. If I wanted to add a tag at this point, I could. Remember, tags are used later on or in other parts of your command process. If you wanted to put in somebody is buying a home in Mill Creek, and so you want to add them to your Mill Creek tags so that when you're marketing, when you're doing all these other things, then you could put them in there. Or it could be their investor, whatever it is. If you wanted to at this point, you could actually change that. I'm just going to leave that alone. The only things that you have to put in here are the ones that have the red asterisks, just like in most other systems. So in this instance, because we're about to put in an offer, I'm going to go ahead and put them as active, and I'm going to put them into the negotiation stage. The other part is the commission rate, which I'm going to go back and double check and make sure what's the commission rate for the property? So the commission rate is down here and it is 3% because I'm acting as a single agent, or, well, in this case, I'm a transaction broker because that's a listing within our office. And so this is what the percentage would be. So just to go over that little piece, check to see if you are acting as a transaction broker, which would be any listing that is from this office is a transaction broker. I'm not going over the different, the big differences between those. You want to go through Scott's class. However, if it's in this office, you must be acting as a transaction broker. So double check this number and make sure that you are going to put in the right information wherever it is that you need to put it in. And then, of course, if you're a single agent, which I'm going to say probably 8 or 9 times out of 10, you're going to be a single agent. That's what's going to happen. We, for the most part, don't operate as non-represented agents. If you ever have some odd instance, then just check with Scott or myself and we'll confirm what's going on. But you're pretty much always going to be either the single agent or the transaction broker. All right, so I have that.
So I'm sorry, so we put in the transaction broker rate, not the single rate.
In this particular instance, because this is out of our office, we're taking the listing as if we're putting in an offer on Scott Knowles.
I have a question.
Sure.
So, and I've asked you this before, but
Yeah.
I've never actually put it in here. When you see the percentage, the commission rate percentage as a percentage minus a dollar amount, how do you do that?
That's going to be in the commissions tab. So on occasion, you're going to see an extra fee. So it'll say 2.5% or 3, and then it will also say minus 250, 395. I haven't seen it over 395 or 399. 295 is pretty popular. 250 to 300 is probably the most popular one. And that goes into the commissions tab. So that's not to put the offer in, that's the commissions part. And there is a little section. Yeah, there is. Yeah, and we are still gonna, my hope is that we actually will, I still show you that tab, but keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And it's a fairly common thing around here, this particular office. We don't do that. We don't charge an extra transaction fee, but a lot of offices do.
What is it used for? I've never wondered if
It's to get more money.
We'll give you less.
Yeah, but I mean, what is there?
The idea behind it is that it is a transaction. So like if you are working for, let's say, 100% company, then it's covering that. Some people think of it as, well, I'm going to hire a transaction coordinator and they're going to charge me $250. And so I'm going to pass that along, which it's a different philosophy, but they do it. And right or wrong, I'm not here to judge one way or another. Currently, we don't do it, but there are a number of offices around here that do it. So don't be surprised if you see it. And you are allowed to do it. So this is your business. So if you want to do that, you can. You can. It comes off of the commission. It doesn't come from a client. Okay. So we got this part as far as what our percentage is going to be. So now I can go, whoops. This is gonna be the way. So now I'm going to go back to, whoops.
If you list that property with that stipulation, would you have to get the consent of the owner or the seller to that you didn't have the commission?
That you're going to have a fee?
Yeah.
Mhm. It has to be on the listing agreement.
Okay, so.
Yeah, if you are going to charge that fee, then it does need to be on the
because some
listing
may
agreement.
not Particularly like that because some
Agreed.
agents may not show that because of the.
Yeah,
I know
they're
you shouldn't,
probably not. That's probably not going to happen, that an agent isn't going to show the property because there's that extra fee. However, that would be my argument if I am selling myself.
yeah.
And I'm on a listing appointment, I would be pointing out all the deficiency of another company. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, you could, yes to that question. All right, so this one is, the commission rate is 3. So that is in here. I have filled out all of my little red asterisks. I'm going to say you could put in your estimated closing date. The thing is, when you are actually putting in an offer, frequently that changes. And some of these dates and the dates and dollars, just keep in mind, when you get to the point that you're putting the paperwork together, some of the things are actually going to grab the information that you put here. And so then you go back and you put in the offer, and then you're negotiating, and then there was a change to the date. And then at some point later on, there's another document that you're producing, and it pulls the date instead of it being that you actually put it in. So I'm going to caution you to be careful when you're putting in dates or dollars. Be careful of where you put that, because it will pull it when you get to the point that you're doing the documents. It's going to automatically pull information. And so just be careful. Right now we're at the negotiating stage. I do not know how much he's going to accept for this property. And so I would suggest, and you can do it however you want, when it comes to the budget part, leave that blank. And the same thing with the closing date, leave that blank at this stage. So I'm on the command section. I have not gotten to the point that I'm in DocuSign. I'm in the command section. So because I've done this, so we're good on this screen for the most part, pretty filling in the blanks, guys. I mean, that for the most part, treat this as if you're filling in the blanks. Great. I'm going to create. So now I actually have a opportunity that has been created. It's going to say who it belongs to, which for the most part, you guys are all agents that you're working, you're single agent, or you're agents that are not on a team. So you're not going to have anything here that's done. That's going to say something different. You could go into the buyer's profile and just be aware there's nothing that you need to do at this point. That's something about the guide later on, but we're going to do that separately. That's more in the classes that we teach you as far as the design when you're producing emails and social media posts and things like that. So I'm going to leave this section to be more about the designs class that we do and the tech classes that Samantha does to talk more about that. Now you get to the document stage. So what happens here?
I have a different screen all of a sudden.
Oh,
So I don't have- Did you change the buyer? You created the opportunity or the same?
well, let me go back.
Does it say
Hold on.
buyer or seller? Top of the-
This part here, Pamela, does this say buyer or seller here? Which actually for the screen that I was on, that part's irrelevant. Mhm. If you go, I'm going to back up. Okay, so if I was here, oh, and I just created it. So hold on a second.
I thought I hit create and I don't, and then I just got totally different screens.
So when you went to
Oh,
create,
okay,
you
yeah,
did,
I've got it. It's under opportunities. Sorry.
oh, that's okay. Okay, so you did get to here. Okay, hold on a second. No, that's okay. We'll figure it out.
I have my buyer, I have it as buyer. I have all of that.
Okay, hold on a second. Okay, so everybody knows for the most part what the screen is, right? This is my detail screen. So overall, it is faster in the long run, and yet it feels tedious at this point. If that makes any sense whatsoever. I'm going to go back to my MLS and I'm going to grab the address. Oh, why do I keep doing that? And I'm going to fill in that address, which it took it automatically because it found it, which for the most part, it is going to find just about any address outside of new construction. New construction is a whole nother animal. You're going to have to enter it in manually. Yeah, see, that's why you came to class. All right, so if the address exists, then you shouldn't have a problem. If it's new construction, you're probably going to have to just do it manually. I'm going to save. And so now I've got my contact information about my person, and it's okay that this is empty. My budget is 0. My commission is 0. Obviously, we are going to get paid, but remember, that's because it pulls it into other documents, and I don't want to do that yet. My address is over here. So that wasn't really all that bad.
You're under details or documents?
I'm under details.
Okay.
So if you look on the screen, you'll see that there's a blue line underneath what stage I'm at. Okay. This should be your sample. So it's okay for you to actually be doing what I'm doing. And you can archive it later on. It doesn't really matter, but now you'll have a sample, which is really helpful for you later on. Now I'm going to click on documents. So if you did read the email before this class, did everyone click on the buttons and got to where they needed to go from the video that I did? And it's okay if you didn't.
Got pretty much there.
Pretty much there. Okay. Then you might stop at a certain point because we're not going to go through how,
I
yeah,
think I changed, I think what I have, the MLS thing was the issue, and that's now there.
which is why I did the video for you.
Didn't let me get those documents because
Right.
I wasn't part of it, so now that's all.
Yeah.
set up.
Which is exactly why I did that video, because we end up it just becomes, for us to then go through that little part. So good. So what's going to happen is I am going to now hit start transaction, and we currently, everyone in this room, and Tara, of course, because she's new, is going to use DocuSign. The reason .loop is there is because before a year ago, or before 2020, let's say, we did use .loop. That was the system that we used. So you're going to have a blank screen here. It does not have any documents. So the way that I add documents is I can do it in 2 ways. I can either add documents from going to DocuSign, or I can add documents from my computer. So does anybody think of a reason that I may need to, and you may not, but let me know if there's anybody, is there something that you would have to add that's not in DocuSign? Maybe a form or something that is already filled out from the listing document, the listing agent? Anybody have an idea?
The transaction broker or the single agent.
No, that's not part of putting in an offer, but that was good. Anyone else? Maybe. Okay, that's right. You didn't have to know. So a seller's disclosure.
So this one might work perfect. How do they not? I mean, you sync transaction or go to transaction.
Sync transaction or go to a transaction.
Transaction. You give me the option.
Okay, hold on. Zoom recording. Okay, perfect. So if for some reason you're not able to go to transaction, just keep, if it doesn't bring you to this screen, just know that it could be that you have your pop-up blockers might actually be there. So go figure out how to do that. With different computers are going to do it differently, and that'll let you move forward. So then you're going to go to, again, DocuSign is what we're using. And in addition to DocuSign, your listing agent for that property may have put in some documents that we're going to need to have signed as well. So I'm going to show you that too. But in this instance, there's going to be documents that we're going to need to pull from the system. We have DocuSign forms, and we also have DocuSign forms group. Got to keep in mind, even though it has the group, it's not going to have every single document. There are going to be some documents that you're going to have to pull from one of the other services that are here. So we have forms library and forms group. So I'm going to start with my forms group. And this is a residential purchase. And now I'm going to pull the documents that are needed for this particular property. So how do I know what I need to pull for this particular property? Well, the beautiful thing about Command is if I go back to this screen, if you notice, if you notice, it has a checklist. I've got to find out what checklist I need, but I do have a checklist. So with my checklist, I'm going to call it the consultation, even though we're about to put in an offer, because I'm not yet under contract. there are a couple of things that I'm going to need for this. Now, when you start working with someone, there is a document that you need, and that is your relationship agreement. So we're gonna, when we go back to DocuSign, there is gonna be a relationship agreement that's going to need to be there. And then if there was to be a no broker relationship, which is more for a for sale by owner, that's probably the experience that you're gonna have with it. Probably 9 times out of 10, you're gonna have the broker relationship. So if you notice, it's the only one here that's required. And that's not to diminish the value of a exclusive broker agreement, but that's a different class. And I'm just going to put that to the side at the moment. And if you have done that, then obviously put that in here as well. But the one that's required, and it has the little red/pink code, and it tells us I need this document. So what do? I can go back to DocuSign. Whoops. Why do I have? Let me get rid of those two. Hold on a second.
Did you select all and just added them? You didn't go through, when you picked the group, you just said select all?
I haven't done that yet.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mine's not looking like-
So hold that thought for a second so that I can answer the question properly. So remember in command, this is what I'm looking for. And so in my document, now I can do it a couple of different ways. I could just kind of like copy. I wouldn't necessarily copy the entire document title because sometimes they change it. And when they change it, then all of a sudden there's an extra space or there's a number there and it kind of messes everything up. But I've got the gist of the document that I want. And if you look here, it's brought me to, I have 3 choices. I have single agent to transition to transaction or no brokerage. In this instance, remember, I'm going to be a transaction broker. So this document is now required because once everything gets approved or once I get a signed, executed contract, I'm going to need this document. So let's start this process and make sure that it's actually done. This is also something that from the system before was not a required document to be in the system. So if you may have done it at one time, and I think that you were there have been a couple of people that were like in the middle of it, and I was freaking out. I'm like, no, it's not required. No, it's not required. Then I got yelled at. No, it's required. I mean, I knew it was required in a different way, but from the paperwork, I was like, no, the system's wrong. So it needs to be in here. So there we go. So in this instance, this is the proper one. I'm going to go ahead and add that one. So now that I've added that, I now can go back to my checklist and I've satisfied everything that is part of the consultation. Now, it would be nice, maybe from a logical perspective, if the next step would be that it's like offer stage, but it's not. It's the under contract stage, brings me another checklist. Now, the reason that it has this checklist like this is because once you get everything signed and you're officially under contract, that's the time when we as an office need to, from compliance perspective, take over and make sure that we have everything that we need to have. So what documents do I need from this? Well, I'm going to need the MLS broker synopsis in pending status, which is this document. You notice it says broker synopsis. However, once it's an executed contract, the listing agent will change the status part. Instead of active, it'll now say pending. Why are we smiling like that?
Because I had no idea about this.
Oh.
Remember I called you and I was like, what
This is 2 questions that she isn't, and she's even closed on a contract. All right, so there we go.
Oh, no, I know this now.
No, oh, well, now everybody knows. So there's a benefit to everyone. So that's going to be my first thing, right? The next thing is going to be the actual contract for sale and purchase. And it has in parentheses as is or standard. And that's because depending on the type of contract that you actually put in, it's going to have either or. So we're going to go over the contract for sale and purchase. documents, because that's what we're suggesting that you use. There will be occasions when you choose the as is for a variety of other reasons. The listing agent requires it. There's numerous reasons as to why, but I want you to always default and think in your mind, why would I not use the contract for sale and purchase? So the as is the rare one. The contract for sale and purchase is the one that we want you to use more so. Yes.
Also interesting came up yesterday and I actually looked at it.
Mhm.
In this one, the realtor remarks is no as is contract will be accepted. So I actually put it in there. plus
Yeah.
he wants to-
Well, this is Scott also, and Scott is adamant. He doesn't ever want to see an as is contract as long as he
Realtor
lives.
remarks,
Yeah.
Well, and I've seen the opposite too.
I have
seen
too.
Other agents say, not from our office, but they say as is only.
You'll see both. And because we're in a hot, very, very hot sellers market, you in some ways, by doing the opposite of what they're asking, you're putting yourself at a deficiency when it comes to multiple offers. So just keep that in mind. Choices are made. Yes, Mark.
No. So when, if you're with a buyer and the buyer says, I want to put an offer in on this property, are you then meant to say, explain that you've got the option of 2 contracts, or you just give them the regular follow-on?
Oh, no, I would mention that there's 2 contracts and here's why. Mhm. Yeah. And have urged them for the reasons why to use the one that we like to use. And yet, yes,
So you default, but you still say, okay, how do
Yeah.
you know about this?
there's two contracts that we have and here's what they do. Here's the difference, which goes back to more of classes with our broker and also the attorney. So just keep those in mind. So that's going to be needed. So again, I'm noticing here, I've got requirements. So I've got 5 requirements for the contract. Well, in this instance, it's not only the requirements, I'm also going to need some other things. And here's how I suggest, and if there's a better way, I am all ears for anyone. When they go through putting together a contract, how I teach you guys is ask yourself the question. If you notice, there's a question right next to it, and it says, so it's conditional. So I've got my required ones up there that we're going to go back to, but then I've also got my conditional, and it's asking a question. If there is a successful counter offer, upload it here. Well, at this point, we don't have a counter offer because we haven't even made the first offer. So I don't need that yet. And I go down to the next thing. If the contract is contingent on the sale of the buyer's property. Well, if it is, what document would I be looking for? Something that says buyer's contingent, buyer's property or sale of buyer's, it's actually a buyer's sale of property contingency. So you just go through this and look for what would be needed. If it were to be a 55 and older community, I would need the document that supports that type of property. And it goes on and on about your lead paint, drywall. There's just a few things that are in here. HOA is the one you were definitely going to need for this property. It is in a community that is that has an HOA. How do I know that? It's right up here. Sorry, not right up here. In the community information on whether or not there is a management company. So this has that there are that there is an association, an HO or condominium association. It's yes. So I know that there should be a document that supports that. Now, if everything is rainbow and roses, you would have it in the listing. How do I have it in the listing? Right up here, there is a paperclip. There is a reason why I use Scott's listing, by the way. Scott's listings has everything. I want you to know it's not uncommon to have a listing that you're putting in an offer that has nothing in the paperclip, even though it should have something in the paperclip. Happens all the time. She's done a few contracts, not a ton, and yet she's already experienced it. So
Where's the paper?
right up here, look at my mouse.
I see.
Mhm.
I got it.
Yep. So because I'm going to need that, I'm going to already go over here and I'm going to click on these documents and make sure that they're downloaded. Now the computer that I'm on, and I can't speak for everything, it's going to automatically download them. So I'm just going to click on them all and download them. Very common the one that tends to be here more than the others is going to be the property disclosure. So perfect. I downloaded all 3 of those documents. I'm going to close that out. I don't need that tab anymore. And I'm going to go back to my checklist. So here are the items that I need to actually create or put into the system. The broker synopsis, remember, that's on hold at the moment. So it's going to be required when I get everything approved to get everything approved. But at the moment, it's not in pending status because they haven't even seen my offer yet and accepted it. That only happens when it's accepted. I am going to need to have a contract. This is, we call it a contract, but this is what we use to put in the offer. So in this instance, I'm going to need a contract for sale and purchase. So I can do it a couple of ways. I can just copy and then go to my documents and I can add. And at this point, because a lot of these forms are actually going to be here, I'm going to use my groups. So I go back to okay. So I need a contract. So again, there is the choice of the as is. There's also the residential contract for sale and purchase, which is the one that we're going to actually use. Gonna add that. Now I could do this all individually, or I could do it like I just did those 2 individually, or I can do a few at a time. So now let's do a few at a time. So I go back to command to double check. All right, check. I got that one off. And we also do have those checklists. Oh, I could have done that for this class too. There are checklists. That one. Yeah. Does everybody?
I was gonna say, can we just do that? I know, well, like when I put this one, it said 47, so it's not
You-
obviously all on.
So you can use the paper checklist. This is what I want to urge you to still verify with this. Tomorrow, the Realtors Association could come out with something
Right.
and it could have changed. And that may not be updated tomorrow. It may not be updated until Monday. And or you find that in your file and it's from this year and it's like February of next year. And you're like, oh, here's my checklist. So I just want you to be cautious.
Okay.
Yeah. Verify.
Instead of going back and forth,
Trust but verify.
you can kind of go with
You can.
this
Yeah,
one.
you can. You could definitely do that. The other thing that you could do is you could take this on another tab and have them side by side. You could do that, which is actually what I personally do. I personally do that if I'm doing it for myself, because I will tell you, while I have the knowledge to do it, I could very well miss, and I have missed. When I go back to check, it's like, how did I miss the whatever? And I have done it. So I'm a checklist person. I rely on checklists. So I'm also going to need my buyer's disclosure, which is a KW item. A confirmation of escrow. That is once you have your accepted contract. So once you're accepted, you're going to get a confirmation of escrow deposit, which is at the title company. The title company has that. There is a wire fraud prevention notice. So that's going to be something that you have to forward over. That's another thing that is newer. I don't know if that's on that checklist.
As required.
It's newly required like 3 days ago. Or, well, so that's not on there? So good. Okay, so see, we already found that. So keep in mind, if you are going to use your paper checklist, that it is the most updated. Can you remind me? Side note to put that on there. I won't necessarily remember unless I write it down. But there are a couple of other, there are some other things that I'm going to need from here. I am going to need my HOA disclosure. So that is something that was downloaded, remember? So I already have that. So the only other thing that I actually need, well, there's a couple of other things. So there's going to be my KW buyer's disclosure. I'm going to need that. And then I'm also going to need my wire prevention notice. Those are the 2 that I'm actually going to be grabbing from the documents that are in here.
Not in the group.
They're not correct. I was just about to say that.
I was just looking.
That's okay. So I actually have the wrong one. So in the KW. Oh, whoops, I take that back. Hold on a second, where is it? Hold on a moment, guys. May not be on there yet. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so under Florida associations is where your wire fraud notice is. So they're buying, so we're gonna pick the buying one. So that's gonna take care of the wire fraud. This one I don't have yet, the confirmation of escrow. The buyer's disclosure, so that's in the same spot. So I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna go here, DocuSign forms. Now that's a KW, this is a KW form because it actually said KW buyer's disclosure. So I have that now. Okay, so at this point I have 4 documents. Let's make sure it matches up with my checklist. I have my contract for sale and purchase is going to be in there, my disclosures, my confirmation for the escrow is not there yet. My wire fraud is not there yet. But there are some of those other documents. Remember, I have the seller's disclosure that is from the MLS sheet. So I've downloaded it. So now I'm going to go to add, and I'm going to go from my computer to, oops, to downloads. And there were 3 downloads that they had. They had a declaration, they have the disclosure, and they also have the CDD. I want to make sure that my client gets everything that they're supposed to get. So I'm able to send it to them electronically and don't have these random emails that go back and forth that I sent you this, I sent you that. I want it all to be together. So at this point, currently, these are the documents that are going to be required. It doesn't mean that there's not going to be something later on, but this is what's going to be required. If I have signatures and everybody accepts that the office, our compliance person would go through and say, yes, you have what you need. Yes, Hilton.
So I got all of that. Just quickly, what's the difference again between the forms library and the forms group? Are they two
So the group
separate?
has some of the documents. I'm going to say the group is not a perfect thing because it doesn't allow us to put from multiple different places into one group. You can only make a group for like KW group forms. You can do,
So it has everything from the library. It's just-
yeah, so it's probably better just
So
to
it's the
do
same-
it.
oh, so they're both the same thing. One is just they tried to group it.
Yeah, we tried to group it, but it's this property is probably like not the best example to use for the group. If it's a property that doesn't have. No, I'm gonna take that back. Not sure if the groups is gonna be the best thing at this moment. We're working to get those connected, which will make it a little bit better. So like 3 days from now, you might have that the group has what it could. At the moment, we don't necessarily have the background ability to be able to do that. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so I have the documents that I need. The big one that we're going to spend the rest of this time on is going to be, I'm going to go into my contract for sale and purchase.
Real quick for you there, what do you pick the seller MLS forms? Like what forms would be under the seller tab when you do drop down? What would be under there?
Different class. I'm going to put that to the side because I'd have to go
You
through.
don't need anything here for a new seller.
No, in this instance, we're acting as a buyer.
Okay.
Yep, we
That's
are.
just the list.
Yep.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
I needed to know,
it's
not
different.
buying.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm about to put in an offer on this home. So I have my MLS sheet up. I have my tax sheet up. So that's going to be the information that I'm going to need for my contract for sale and purchase. Before I do that, I'm going to go into the details section. And in the details section, if I hit edit, I need to fill out as much as I can about the property itself and the people that are involved. There are going to be other items that go into like the offer details and bids, closing details, additional information. I'm going to suggest for the initial offer that you don't really do much with these other pieces, the contingency dates and things like that. at this point, leave that stuff alone. So here, I need to know what the address of the property is. I think I might have had it in my queue, but let's just double check. So I copy and paste. Whoops. I'm just parking it here. This is the way that I do it. I'm not saying that this is the best way to do it, but this is what I do. I want to park my information so I can just grab it and put it into different places. So it's asking me for the, sorry, it's not asking me. It's asking me for the MLS number up here. Great, got the MLS number. That in. You will at some point need to have this under US currency. Remember, we are a global company, so we are selling real estate in other places. You could fill this out. It's not a requirement of the origin of the lead. This is something that we are trying as a company to continuously capture so that we know, are we getting more leads from online advertising, from door knocking, from open houses, prospecting, and different things. So I'd like for you to fill that out. If there was, let's say you got all of this actually done and we currently were in the made offer or received offer or anything like that, we're not currently, but you could go ahead and put that into the right status. So I've gone ahead and I got rid of my MLS part. Now I need, my city is Palmetto. And my zip code. So now I've got my address in there. I do suggest making sure you don't have any extra spaces. Okay, so I've got my address, I've got my city, I've got my postal code. You could go in and, because when you enter this in, it is going to then go onto the contract. So I am going to do that because I don't like it going up and down. It's like the first part of the contract just looks kind of messy. So the county, that's Palmetto, so that's Manatee. And state is Florida. Okay, so I've got an address, a city, a zip code, property type. This is a detached home. When is it built? When was it built? So it was built 2015. So right here on the top, 2015. Great. Whoops. 2015. Good. Is there a special circumstance? This is more when we have offered, you guys are going to be in the business for a very long time. There will be a time when you deal with a foreclosure or a short sale. So that's where this would come into play. Currently, it is not really anything. Contingency may, if you have that the buyer needs to sell a property, then you could do that. These items, I'm not going to put anything in there because it's not needed at this point. And remember, this then filters over to when you're pulling up the documents. And if you put something in there and then you're renegotiating and you're redoing something, and you had put that, you know, June 30th was going to be a great closing day, and you negotiated, and it ends up that it's going to be July 10th. And then you end up doing everything and making changes, and you don't change that. And they're like, I thought we negotiated this. And then, you know, it's not best for you. So that's my suggestion. You want to go for it. So now I have some things on the side that I am going to need to actually fill out. Again, copying and pasting. So in this instance, I need my seller information to start with. So it always starts with your seller, and there are 2 spots for your seller. If there are more than 2 sellers, which can happen, just make sure that you're adding the names and put like the first. So let's say it's Mark Smith and Hilton Adams. You could just put, you know, one on the top as far as the first name, and then the second name. You could do that if you needed to, or you could leave that part blank and then add it at the end. You will have an opportunity to add that. So if it's something that's a little wonky, that's something that you could do. In this instance, we have two, whoops, sorry, not what I wanted to do. I have two people. I am just going to copy it. Copy and paste, because I want to make sure that I have their names perfect. So again, I love my copy and paste. I will also double check to see if they have a different mailing address, which in this instance, their address is in their tax mailing address is the same. Sometimes you're having people that live somewhere else, or that their mailing address is something else, because this goes on to another part of the contract. For the most part, this is not going to change. So that's okay to have it filled out. So I could put that information in here. So just to, oops, so that you can see what it looks like. Isn't putting in a contract, isn't this the most exciting class like ever?
It is. I had some taxes here.
Well, yeah, that would make it a little bit more exciting.
You're under details and then you just did the edit button for general information or property. I'm not seeing those.
Under details. I'm under details,
Yeah, under details and then.
far right.
Mhm.
You don't have this?
I'm looking at what's going on. I just have general information, property. You know, one of those that I-
Are you in DocuSign?
Oh, man, coming up to the back of that.
Yep.
Oh, detail of that.
Yep.
Okay.
So I'm in, yep. So right up here, I'm in DocuSign. So that's where this information is. And as far as their address, again, copying and paste. Now this goes on the last page, so I'm not really worried about if it has capitals and not capitals, because it'll all look the same on that page. Oh. Well, if I do that right. Oh, you must put United States first. Florida. And I think that will have the complete address. I think, yeah. Okay, and addresses are pulled from the seller one or buyer one. So I actually, in theory, do not need to put this into the second one. Now remember, the seller is not my client. So the seller is not in my contacts in DocuSign. The seller is only from the tax records. For the most part, I'm probably not having communication with the seller directly. That is few and far between. So I'm not privy to putting their email address in there unless that would be given, which once in a while you may have it given to where you get something signed on the behalf of the other agent, things like that. But most of the time, you're not going to have their email address. So keep that in mind. So I have the first seller and the second seller, and I just go by how the tax records are written. I'm not picking the, if it's a female and a male, I'm not picking one or the other as to how it's done. They said it in the tax records, so I'm going to go by whatever they chose. Then we've got the listing agent part. So, oh, who's the listing agent? Oh, Scott, sounds like a nice guy. So I could go in again if I wanted to. I mean, I know how to spell his name, so let me not do that part. I'm going to take his email address because at some point I am going to need that. And, oh, hold on. Ah, I have to get this. Do that. So I'm then going to go back here and I'm going to put in, oh, sorry about that. There's his email. Oh. And I could go ahead and put in his phone number, things like that. What I am going to do, just so that it comes out, so that you see it, I am going to put Keller Williams Realty Select. So we are not just Keller Williams. Keller Williams is in Austin, Texas. We are Keller Williams Realty Select. So please make sure that you do put our full name. And you could put the address, but that's actually not going to do anything. It's not going to go anywhere. So I'm not going to worry about that at the, or does it? No, I don't think it goes anywhere. I'm not going to worry about that. Now, the cool thing is, remember, apparently I'm buying a house. So because I already connected it to me at the very beginning of this process, or I connected it to the buyer at the beginning, it's going to pull the information that I have in the system for that buyer. In some instances, you may not have everything, which for the most part, you should have an email. You have to have an email address to do this electronically. However, maybe you don't have a phone number. That would be weird too. But in essence, you don't have to have everything. Ideally, you are going to have their address, because there is a part at the bottom of the contract where it does ask for the mailing address. Now, you can still have a valid contract without that being filled out, but it doesn't hurt for you to have that. So definitely have that. So let me just put in. Oh my goodness. If there was to be a second buyer, then I would put that in there. It's going to automatically pick you as the agent for the buyer's agent. If this was a listing, it would have you in the listing spot because you told it at the very beginning where you should be. So that should automatically pull. Okay, so I have filled out as much as I can. This is, again, one of those things. By doing the detail section in Command and doing the detail section in DocuSign, you are now preparing to where when you start to fill out the paperwork, much of it is done for you. And it'll do it per document instead of going back and doing it over and over and over again. So that's the whole purpose. Take 5 minutes, do this, and it'll make it a little bit better. Make it a lot better.
I have a question.
Mhm.
So I know with Scott, it's usually him and his wife. So do you have to put the other agent on there? Or say if I'm part of a team, am I putting?
You actually don't have to. And you don't have to. It's not going to do anything from the contract perspective as far as making it less. It's not really going to matter. It really doesn't matter. Wouldn't be a bad thing. Yeah, I'm trying. Yeah. Yeah, it wouldn't be a bad thing. Okay, so we are here. Okay, I now have done all this. Now, yippee, I get to go to the documents. We are going to use the contract for sale and purchase as our main one. Again, time purposes to make sure. For the most part, the other ones you are really just filling out information. But if you notice, it pulled information for you, which is very beneficial. If you want to, you can make an adjustment. Like, let's say for some reason you caught, oh, I did this wrong. You could actually change it here if you wanted to. So I could go back and make this like lowercase and uppercase if that's would make sense.
But when you save it here, it doesn't save any detail.
Does not, no, which is actually a good thing though, because sometimes you have to add something to it. And it's more beneficial for you to be able to have some correction abilities here. So what is it asking me? So it put in the details as far as like the address and the name of the buyers and the seller, which is great. And however, now I need to grab some information from the tax records. So it's going to ask for two things. It's going to ask for my tax information, which is up here as far as the, oh, I apologize. As far as the property ID, which is the top number. So I am going to need this. So I am going to just grab it, go back to my document, and I'm going to put the property ID number and paste it. Please do not try to type this. Just copy and paste. Second piece of information is going to be this legal description, which is down here. And I'm going to put that in here. I actually, oh, apparently I didn't copy it. Hold on. You will on some cases, and also when you go through some of the other training, they have you go to a different place to confirm the legal description. I'm going to revert back to those other classes that you can do that. And also, if you're ever in a situation that you need more than these spaces, which sometimes you do, sometimes it's a whole paragraph for the property description. And if that is the case, then go down to the bottom, just the last page. Oops, sorry. Right here where it has the additional information, and you can actually put it in here. So you would say see additional information section 20, and then you could put the details of the property description.
So a new copy, never skip the new copy link. Always go to the- like, once it's on the county, on the.
You can do Control C or Command C.
I know it just goes like.
Command C for you. There's a Mac. You don't have to like right click or something like that. And then Command V for view.
Oh, to paste it.
To paste it, correct. Okay, all right, so I have that done. Now, are there going to be any other items? If you have gone to the other classes, a lot of the times what they talk about is the washer and dryer is not listed up here in the items that are already in the contract itself. So look at the contract and see, is it actually going to have the washer and the dryer included? And it does. So this has the oven, the cooktop, dishwasher, microwave. So the washer and dryer are part of this are not part of this. And as well as the microwave. So washer. There we go. If there was to be something that is not included, let's say they have a 30-year-old refrigerator in the garage that you do not want to have to dispose of, or your client doesn't want to have to dispose of, and it's listed in the contract and you don't want that refrigerator, you want them to take care of it, you could actually put excluded. Or if in the contract they have something that's excluded, like let's say chandelier is a popular thing. So if there was to be something that is excluded, and in this case I don't see anything that's excluded, it would be over here as well, then there's nothing really for me to change. Okay. Now we go into the purchase price. So how much do they want to offer? Well, my hope is that you would have double checked to see what is an appropriate price to offer. That would be going back to a CMA class that we've done, a pricing class. We have a few of them. Again, going back to the email that you got when you first started from me that said, welcome. It does have a CMA class is in there. It's a long class, and yet it gives you a really detailed way to get pricing. There's also how to do it a little bit faster as well. And if you happen to, maybe it's like, what, we're just going to throw money at it. Whatever you guys decide with your buyer is going to be reflected. So this one is listed at $575. Just because this is not a pricing class, I'm just going to put $575. Now, something that you may get annoyed with, you're not able to put a comma in here. If that drives you crazy, when you get to the end step before you send it to someone, you could actually add text and put a comma. That's the only way to do it. For the class purposes, I'm going to fill this out here. So I know that there's some people in here. This will be driving them crazy, but you can't put a comma. Just have to move on. Initial deposit. So this is the amount of money that they're putting in, that they're saying, I'm going to put money down to show you that I'm serious. In many cases, we use like a 1 to 3% formula. If you want to be really aggressive, put more. So putting $100,000 down at the initial deposit and you're in multiple offers, that would probably put your contract ahead of somebody else that put down like $5,000. Now, it just depends. If you are dealing with someone who's bought multiple properties from, I can speak specifically for New Jersey when I lived there, and I hear that it's about the same now. I think it's very similar for others. Actually, how is New York? Do you guys just still put it down the $1,000, even if it's $1 million property?
They used to do binders for $100, but now it's pretty much.
It's a free-for-all?
10% or whatever.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's no really set amount anymore. All that kind of stuff went out the window.
Yeah, okay. Well, and it does also in this kind of a crazy market, like there is not exactly a formula, but I'd say the more the better. If they're planning on putting down 200,000, I'll tell you, if I wanted to win an offer, win a contract, and I have somebody that is, we're going to be paying, we're going to mortgage 50%, then I would say, how comfortable are you with putting down like 40% as an initial deposit? You want to make a statement? That's how you do it. And they'd probably go, I say, well, do you want the house or not? Because if I got that as a listing agent, I was able to look at it and say, oh, they're serious. It says something. So keep that in mind.
Attorneys don't allow you to put down that kind of money. But
Yeah, we
now
don't deal
this
with
market,
attorneys here though.
They'll like put it down.
Yeah, we
So
don't.
they, it's a totally different world.
It's a different world down here. I know. I had, attorneys when I see in other places, you like fill out things and then you just pass it over to the attorney and the attorney does everything. It's not that way here. So just for argument's sake, let's say they're going to put down, I don't know, 50,000. That's a good amount. Oh, again, see, I'm trying to put a comma down. Please make sure your numbers are correct. So 50. Yep. And then also, is it going to a company or is it going to be made after an accepted offer? 9 times out of 10, you're going to do it that it's after the offer is accepted. 3 days is very realistic for most people. If they're serious about it, I would keep that tight at 3 days. If for some reason they're going to need to move money around, then give yourself some more days. So if you have someone that's taking money out of some type of a 401k or something like that, you got to give them like 10 days or so. It's not immediate. So just keep all of that in mind, that do you have this in an account that you actually can have it transferred, that we can do a wire transfer, and can that be done in, within a couple of days? But it should be minimal. Don't put 10 days unless you have to for that reason. So I have money down here, my escrow agent. So who is the escrow agent? When all of you start, you get a handbook that has a few people that are recommendations that are from people that we work with here in the office. You're going to see iCard Merrill, which is the one that is with the attorney who does our contract classes. That's the company that he works with. Integrity is another one. And there's a few others. So you can always look to your handbook. You can ask me, you can ask other agents, who is it that you'd like to use? If you have an experience with whoever you used last time you bought a house, then that might be great as well. But whoever that is, put that in there. So this is a conversation that you'd have with your buyer, and you would ask them, have you picked one out? If they haven't picked one out, it is acceptable to be determined, but we'd rather you not. So I don't want to go in. I know the broker kind of talks about it too. We'd like for you to have that already situated. Sometimes you're putting in an offer because you showed a property and you have a deadline of 2 hours from now to put in an offer. And so some of this you do have to just get the offer in. So that might be okay. And if you do end up choosing one that they say something and they're like, oh, I talked to my cousin and they told me to use ABC company, then you're just going to have to do an addendum or a correction at some point, which you can fix that. But ideally, you really don't want to go back and forth with stuff. It just doesn't look good to the other party. Is there going to be an additional deposit? So maybe it's in your best interest, your client's best interest, not yours, your client's best interest for you to say, all right, after I do the inspection, let's put down another $50,000 to have my contract look my offer look very competitive with other people. Like I'm comfortable putting the $50,000 now, and then once I do an inspection, which is 10 days later, possibly, I'm going to give you more money, which will then be more positive for your offer. If there's 4 other offers that they're looking at, or in this world, 30 other offers that they're looking at, could be. So that might be something that you do. So in more traditional times, it might be that you have, let's say you have $25,000 here, and then here you might put another $25,000. And those are your deposits to make sure that the seller knows I'm in it. I'm going to buy this house. That would be a pretty standard type way to do it, or even less money here and then more money here, because maybe you do have to move money around. You know, it might be like, okay, I have 10,000 that I'm comfortable with putting in right now that I can get out of my checking account. However, the other moving, I'm going to have to move from my stock account or whatever it is that you're doing. And so that might be what they end up doing. Then you've got, how much is it that they're going to finance? Well, maybe they're going to finance 50%. It could be that they're going to finance a dollar amount. Whatever that amount is, have it more conservative than they may end up actually doing. So let's say they were to say, well, I think I'm going to put down $100,000, but you know, depends on what we find with the inspection. It may only be 75. Put 75 then. Always put the lower amount as far as the percentage that they're going to do, because if you're changing it, it is a less, there's less strength in your offer, that's problematic. But if you're changing it that it's a stronger, because I'm going to put down more money, they can always do that. But putting down less or mortgaging more is so look for the negative and just make sure that you're as conservative as possible with your numbers. So I put down 50, but if they say it's like, yeah, it'll be like 50 or 60, then in that case, I would put 60, because that's what, you know, at worst case scenario, that's what they would be doing in our eyes. So if they haven't made a decision, then that's what you would do. And also look at what their pre-approval is. So they should have a pre-approval that corresponds with whatever you're putting here. If they're going to do it all cash, then they need to have some kind of a proof of funds. So it would be some type of it could be a bank statement. I am not asking people for bank statements. I'm asking them to go to their financial advisor or their bank and ask for a letter of proof of funds, which they will produce. Any bank and any financial institution will create a letter that says, you know, Susie South has the funds or has the means to purchase a property for $600,000. That's basically all that you need. You do not need the other. And people, it's crazy. I've seen people just freely give it over and then give me like extra stuff. And then I've also had it that they're not giving me like something that is really pertains to what we need. So I've seen it anywhere in between, but asking them for that letter, it's like, just call them up. They will produce it for you, and they will. And different banks and places do it differently. There's no set template exactly. I've seen them done differently. And then you can just call to verify that company. So if you're on the listing side, you call to verify. They have something with Charles Schwab, then you just call, you know, it has, you know, David Thomas from Charles Schwab. And so David Thomas from Charles Schwab would be your contact person just to verify, just am confirming that I received this letter from you, period. Which if they're going through a lot of trouble to come up with some fake thing that's a whole lot of work, but I've seen crazier things. All right, so I've got that. If there was to be other amount, like let's say there was that they were getting a gift from a family member of $50,000, then that should be documented here. It should, if you know about it. Sometimes we don't know about that, and it tends to go more with the lender, but sometimes we do. So if we do, put it there. It's the gift, you know, wedding gift, whatever. And then lastly, putting in here, it will not let you put in the word balance here. You have to do it at the end. So leave that blank, or you could put in whatever the dollar amount is. So let's say it's 300,000. I'm not doing my math, so I'm not going to say that that's what it is, but let's say that 300,000 is what at the closing table that they have to have those funds wired. That might be what they did. The last two things on this page are going to be, how much time are you giving them to accept this offer or not? Are you giving them 24 hours? In the crazy market that we have right now, it's not uncommon for you to give them a small amount of time, meaning like till tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. You know, you're putting in the offer now, could be 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. That might be it. It's more common for it to be more like a day and a half. Part of it depends on the time of the day. Because like if we did it today, well, let's say that they work or they're traveling or something like that. And so the listing agent may not be able to have a good conversation with them until 8 o'clock tonight or 9 o'clock tonight. And then they could very well need to talk to, maybe there's another person involved, you know, maybe it's oh goodness, that when someone, when somebody passes away.
Um,
Oh my gosh, what's that called?
Like a trust.
A trust. Yes, thank you. Well, that's the word that I was trying to think of. Oh, geez. So it could be a trust. And so there might be multiple people that are involved with the decision. And so giving them like 3 hours to make a decision may not actually work. So it's very common for like a 24-hour period of time, and put a time. So today is the 29th. So let's say I put 4:30. Always put the year, and you could say 5 p.m. You could do that. Like that would be acceptable. And then of course, what is the proposed closing time, closing date? For most transactions, you're going to need 30 days. If there is to be a cash transaction, please don't try to do it for less than 20. It can be done. We've done them for 10 days. I've done them for, I think 8 is probably the shortest for a cash deal. But there's things that have to happen on the title side that take time. And so that's not helping anyone for it to close like that. But they do, it does happen. So ideally, 30 days works. If it is an FHA or an HOA, if it is an FHA or a VA, please give them 45 days. That's what you're going to need. So in that case, we're at the end of April, May, June. So let's say June 15th. Oh, look at that. I did this last year. Okay. So those are the things that I would need. I could change this date. I didn't actually say that. So make sure that this date corresponds with whatever needs to happen in that 10 days. If it was to be 10 days, you might say 15 days. If you are looking at putting more money down after an inspection, if your inspection is within 10 days, then you might want to put like 15 to give yourself a couple of days extra, and that would make sense.
So you do put the closing balance in, is it necessary, or like
The closing what?
the closing balance, when you do as collected funds, you do put that in? That's
You
not-
could put the word balance, but maybe everything is super, super clean with your numbers. And
Okay,
I mean, you could, it's either way. The word, yeah, but the balance, you can't put balance in here. It won't let you put words. It only lets you put numbers. So the words have to go on the other side. So same thing with this. I may actually not, if I want to have those little commas, then I could do this all blank and do it at the end. But I put in some for an example. So there's a couple of other things that I want just to get through this piece. And that is, okay, second page. Does it have a tenant in it, or is it going to have something to do with a lease? You would check that if there was. The other part is assignability. Is this a property that can be assigned? That happens more when you have a property that is going to be bought by an investor and they're going to turn it into an LLC. So it might be that I put in the offer as Susan South. However, this is going to be an income property. And so it's then going to be 123 Main Street LLC later on. So in that case, if I'm an investor, I would say most of the time an investor, you're going to do something right here that may assign, but is not releasing the legal liability. May not assign is if it is a straight, that person who's buying is actually going to be living there, then that would be this one typically. But this one is accepted always. I mean, this one's acceptable anytime because they're still legally responsible. However, this one is okay as well. There was a time when, for the most part, I would use this one. But you can use either. Just keep in mind, if it's an investor, it's going to need to be this one. I don't know anyone who would accept a contract that is, it may be assignable. That's more in a crazy, really, really bad market, buyer's market, that you're wholesaling properties, which is a different conversation.
It's usually the second or third.
Usually the second or third.
So you don't tick anything then, you just leave it blank.
No, it's the second or the third. You can't leave it blank.
The second one is investors.
Yeah, so you can't leave it blank. So in this instance, I'm going to actually just say here, so that it's filled out.
Are you asking them these questions or are you just for that particular one?
You could, well, you're gonna know some of it. You can ask them, yeah, you
No,
can
I'm
ask
saying
them,
you
say,
want-
is there any reason why you are not gonna be on the deed? You're purchasing this property, or is it gonna be turned into an income property that you need an LLC or something like that? You could ask that question. Sometimes you're just gonna know because you've been with them
But
and
I'm saying
talking to them.
You're filling, just checking because you know.
In that case, you would be, yeah. You can ask them every time. You definitely can. So then we've got into the financing. So in this one, I was using it as an example, and I was saying that there is going to be a mortgage. And with it being 50%, I'm making some assumptions, but can't imagine it being anything different, that it would be a conventional. And then you can have all of these others that are in here and just find out whatever is matching up with their statement, their pre-approval. So it's probably going to have an amount, or whether it's adjustable or fixed or whatever it is that they have. So have that match up. And then there are a lot of defaults that are within these paragraphs. Some people will like to actually fill it in, even though it has it in parentheses. So you might actually do that. That would be totally up to you. But this is going to be dependent on what they're pre-approved for. So let's just assume that they are, because for the most part, we're doing fixed. So it's conventional, it's fixed. I filled out all my little spots.
A is cash, B is financing.
Correct. In this instance, we're not doing cash. If it was cash, then you would just do that. Yep. Then you go down into this section. Now, this is a section that is sometimes potentially confusing for you. And also because we're in the most insane market ever, it is not uncommon that people are changing this. So if you see how it says 1.5%, this is if there was to be something that's found in the inspection period. So it has the items that are listed here, the general repairs, wood boring organisms, and then of course permits and stuff like that. So to keep the contract intact, you would want to have some type of you need to have something in here. Now, because the market is kind of crazy right now, it's not uncommon that some people are putting actually 0. It's like, we don't care what we find, we're buying this house. That's a very aggressive buyer's contract that you're putting in, saying like, I don't care if we find out that it's, going to blow up tomorrow, we're still buying the house, even after the inspection. Then the seller would look at it and say, okay, well, no matter what they find, I'm not having to pay anything because I've got zeros in here. But what's more common is either a dollar amount or a percentage. And so I'm seeing a lot of 1%, but there is no right or wrong. This is conversations with the buyers and sellers. In a regular market, having the 1.5, like keeping it at 1.5% would be more traditional. Or maybe 1% if you're like, it's a newer house and I know it's going to go fairly quickly. Not the crazy market we have right now, but it's more normal. It's like, there's probably going to be somebody else that might put in an offer too. Then I could be more aggressive and put this as a lower amount. So the more aggressive is a lower amount in this section, whether it's a dollar amount or a percentage. If you are working with an FHA or a VA, they have standards that you really can't override unless they have cash to make up for it. So just keep that in mind. Your FHA document will override some of this unless you negate it, unless you say that I have the cash, basically, which is a different conversation with the lender, because there are certain stipulations with VAs and FHAs. Okay. Then we've got, if there was to be anything that was other here, like maybe there was that the seller was going to pay towards closing costs, you could put that information in here. Again, the market that we have right now, sellers aren't really helping with closing costs. It wouldn't make much sense. Very common to do the 15 days for the title evidence. That's through the title company. They do that. Now you've got who's going to pay for the title. Now it depends on the property, but you're talking about a difference of between probably $1,500, $1,600 and $2,200 maybe, or probably not even that much. That's the difference. So if you want to be more aggressive and have an offer that is more appealing to your seller, then you would probably put that the buyer is paying for it. If you want the seller to front some money, then you could have that the seller is paying for the title. Now, the thing is, whoever is paying for title is also the one that the title company is working for. So if you have concerns about the property, if it's an older property, things like that, it's up to your client, but there might be reasons as to why you want to have the title picked by the buyer. Just keep that in mind. When we get to the home warranty, it is a conversation that you have with them. It's like there are home warranties. They're probably between $500 and $700, and you may choose to do that. You might want to get that at the closing table. If it is a property that is very old or problematic, you may want to have that the seller is paying for a home warranty. You could have that in here. That way, if the AC looks like it's about to die, then in that instance, you could have, well, it looks like it's about to die. And as long as you're willing to do your this home warranty, that if it does die, it will be fixed, then it makes the property more appealing. And we have home warranty companies that are in here. Now, the other things are these installments that are for your, if there are to be assessments. So keep in mind, if they're aware of an assessment that came from the county, roads, things like that, then they may have already been paying some of it. And it's just a matter of, is the seller going to pay for them? So seller shall pay installments prior to the closing date, and then the buyer takes over the ones after. That's pretty common. If there is something big and it was done a year ago and you're still paying for it, then you might choose that the seller is going to pay it off, or it's going to be part of the contract. And at the end of the day, this buyer doesn't have anything extra that they have to pay, then that might be what you choose. So more commonly is that the seller is going to take care of it up till closing, and then the buyer is going to take care of it after that. But just be aware if there is an assessment, and you would know about it. There's county records that prove what's going on. Okay, we're almost done, inspection period, if you want it to be tighter, and a more appealing contract for your seller, for the seller to look at, putting 10 days or 7 days, but keep in mind, inspectors are backed up. So it's great to say that you're going to have an inspection in 5 days. I certainly hope you have a really good relationship with an inspector to get them to agree to actually do an inspection in the next few days, because most of the time they are backed up, and to get them in like 5 days is a little rough. And they also have to produce a report, and the report usually takes about 24 hours. So you got to make sure your timing is right. 10 days, we can always find somebody in 10 days currently. But if you're doing it less than 10 days, I get worried. Okay. Now we are, there's a lot of, I'm not dismissing the value in all of these pages. I want you to, everybody should be reading the contracts at least 3 times if you haven't yet. And it wouldn't hurt you to read it prior to taking somebody out that's a serious client, so that you're prepared if they have questions. The other items that are in here that you are going to have to address is what else is going to be part of the contract. So this is a homeowners association, right? So I'm going to need that document. This is, do I want to have an appraisal contingency? Do I want this contract to be canceled if it doesn't appraise for a certain amount? I may choose that. It's a newer house, so there's no lead paint. not Coastal Line. There's not a lease to purchase. They don't need to sell a property. So for the most part, for this particular contract, that may be it, but it's pretty common to also have the appraisal contingency. So if that is the case, now I had not added the appraisal contingency into the folder within DocuSign, so I would have to add that if I decided that that was part of it. Additional terms, these are things, it might be that there's one other thing that's included. Like, let's say there was this, this bookshelf not attached, because if it's attached, it comes with the house, but there was this beautiful bookshelf that was pretty elaborate that kind of fits perfectly in the house, and that's something that they want. You might have here that you would add that to it. There wouldn't necessarily be any money I mean, there's money exchange for the house itself, but the bookshelf, we want that to be part of the contract, that we're buying the house and we want the bookshelf to be in there. If they're doing a side deal, you have to stay out of that, and the title company has to stay out of it. We don't like to know when money is exchanging hands outside of the contract. You don't want to do that. Just let them handle it. But you would want it to be listed there if there was to be, it's like living room furniture, sofa, love seat, chair, end tables, and pool table. That would be a good one. Yeah. Yeah, pool table, definitely. Yeah. Hot tub. Yeah. Yeah. One of the ones that can be moved. Yeah, that's true. Okay. The rest of it is whether or not they are going to accept the offer or not. But you will have to, and this part can be kind of confusing. Your buyer still has, your buyer still has to sign here, even though this is after the counter offer. The buyer is still required to sign here. So the buyer is required to sign here, and also they're going to be signing on the bottom of the contract. And if it's two people that are purchasing, then you're going to have the two initials. The system automatically places those initials and signatures where they need to go. So that is already part of it. It does it automatically.
I had to do it all manually last time.
Not if you have your people in the right spot. So what happens, and I'll show you this part of it. So let's assume that all of this is done, because for the most part, I went over the big stuff with you, and I think that you're in pretty good shape. So now I have, this stuff is here. So I'm going to save it and close it. And let's say this is the only document that I'm sending over. Ideally, you're doing everything, but for time purposes, this was the main gist of the class that I wanted us to do today. So from here, now I need to create an envelope. So I'm going to move through these phases. The people, I already put the people in. I actually did that at the beginning because that was in the detail section. Remember the stuff on the right-hand side that had the seller, the two sellers, and the listing agent? I actually filled that out. So the people is going to be more about people in the office, and it automatically does it for you. So now I'm going to go to the envelope. So imagine that you collected a bunch of papers. We're all old enough before computers to a degree that there was actually pieces of paper. It's like, okay, I'm going to go and get all these signed. So I got my papers. I'm going to go and get them signed. And now I'm going to put so to get them signed, I'm actually going to have like a little manila envelope that I'm going to close them up before I walk over or mail it or whatever. So I have an envelope of what is it that I need to have signed. So I have here. And in this case, it's a new envelope. I don't have anything before then. And most of the time I'm saying initial offer, but you can write whatever. So honestly, it's only for you, so it doesn't really matter what you call it. I'm going to take the room documents, and the only one that I've filled out so far, and the only one that's pertinent to this particular thing is this. If you're doing an initial offer, you would actually be going through all of these. And in fact, let me,
Automatically fill in those other ones too?
it's gonna automatically fill out the ones that were from DocuSign. However, the disclosure, I'm going to show you this part. The disclosure, you're going to have to add initials to it. So I've got the one that's from the system, and then I've got the one that I pulled from the MLS that was the disclosure. Now I need to tell it who's part of here. Please do not miss this step. You have choices. Please use the pre-tagged roles. If you do not use the pre-tagged roles, you have to enter in all of your initials individually.
Sorry, which one did you, after initially you went next? Sorry.
That's okay. Now I have to tell it who these people are. So I have two buyer, or no, actually I have one buyer in this instance. And that one buyer is myself, really, but okay.
So did you click add recipients on the?
Yes,
Okay.
add recipients. Here, let me go back. Okay, so everybody look, add recipients, pre-tagged roles. Does everybody see this? Want to make sure, because you will have to at some point say, oh, I had to do it manually. And like, this is what you missed. So I've got pre-tagged roles. And in this instance, I'm using my name. So now I've got that. Now, what do I need them to do? Do I need them to sign it? Do I just need them to receive a copy? So if I wanted to, I could add the other agent on the other side to just receive a copy so that once it's all signed, they actually get it. I could do that. I'm not a fan of that because then they're pushed into DocuSign and some people don't like DocuSign and then they get upset. They're like, oh, I couldn't get in and it was problematic. Whereas if you send them an email, they tend to not to complain. So I have that in this instance because that one buyer, it's only one buyer, is the only person that needs to sign. And I could put whatever I want in here. So I could keep that. I could write something different. And then of course I could say, you know, okay, you could write whatever you want. I just wanted it to actually show you something. Now I can go to, oh, move the thing up. Okay. I go to next. This is where you check it to make sure, oh, we are going to have to end like in 2 minutes. This is where you can check where everything has been filled out. If I wanted to add the word balance, this is where I would add it. So I'd put it in here and then type the word balance. The other, and you see how I have an initial, it automatically placed it. So it's going to automatically place the place wherever it needs to have a signature, and you should still check it. And you can actually check it by looking at recipients view. And if there's more than one person, you actually will see different colors and you could toggle between the two.
That'll be two different email addresses, right?
You have to have, whoever has to sign has, each individual person has to have their own signature or their own email. That's a must. So I'm just going to go down to where I get to the other document to show you something again that if I needed to add, oh, sorry, I'm already there. So in the disclosure, so this is my disclosure, it does require a signature. So in this instance, I need her to sign or her to initial. So I just take it and put it there. That's it. And I do that to every page because that's a document. And remember, that was a PDF that I uploaded to the system. So it doesn't read the PDF to say, oh, this is where you need to put it. It doesn't make that assumption. You have to tell it, okay, I need to do that to each page. And if there was anything in writing, then you could do text. If there needs to be a name, that's the full name that you entered into the system. And then you hit send. And that person would get an email that looks like, I'm going to have a lot of emails, no judgment. And now I myself, because I sent it to myself, which is why I sent it to myself so I could see it. I then, this is what they see, and they're able to then go in and sign. They will. Yeah. Yeah, because they have to make sure that it's them, you know? So we go through the start and they're filling in, doing whatever they need to do. Which is, this is basically what they're going to do because they're not going to read it. almost everybody. They're gonna do exactly what I'm doing. And, well, I mean, I say it, they actually have to click on it, but they'll do that and then they'll hit finish. And then you get it on this side where it turns from being needs my signature to completed. Okay, so for time purposes, we have to finish because we have the addendum class coming in. Do you guys have a pretty good understanding of what this is like?
Good.
Basically, better, maybe, not really.
More.
I've watched the video then. Yeah.
Watch the video and practice. Every one of you needs to practice. And this is where I'm going to be mean. I really don't want to be walking you through this at 8 o'clock at night. I don't. I like my husband. And honestly, I like, watching TV once in a while, a little bit, or resting. So I'd like for you to practice so that you get there. That doesn't mean that when you're writing a contract that we're not here to help, to double check and things like that. I just don't want to go through as like, okay, here's how you create a contact. Here's how you upload a document. I want you to get past that. I want it to be more about the negotiating. How do we write a really good contract? What numbers do we need to put in? How can we be aggressive? That's the stuff that you want to be doing at 8 o'clock at night instead of the learning how to use the system. Make sense?
Mhm.
That's the point across. Okay, guys, loved spending time with you. Now you have another class in a minute. And
Get less than 10 minutes.
how will, yeah, I know, it did take longer than I thought. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Tara. I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
You gotta figure out this.
Susan, earlier you mentioned that you sent out a video in the beginning of the CMA.